So you gotta make sure when you're infusing anything that all of your little ingredients are covered by the liquid, okay? Oh, hello. Hello everyone, I am Jenna and this is Jen and Tonic. After my old-fashioned video, I had some requests for a segment on bitters. I also was interested in doing a new one with some pecans and some coffee. I thought this would go really well in Manhattans. I thought this was the perfect time to showcase that. I knew that bitters had a long history because it was used as medicine for a long time, but I had no idea how old. When I was doing my research for this segment, I learned that archaeologists found trace amounts of bitters in some clay pottery pots. Let's have another. Let's have pottery pots. Pottery pots. I learned that archaeologists found trace amounts of bitters in jars inside of Egyptian tombs. Long before bitters were put into drinks, you had to get these from apothecaries. During the Middle Ages, you could find various versions of this with different roots and herbs as cure-alls. It was first patented as a compound medicine in 1712 by a British clergyman, Richard Stoughton. This was exported in the 1730s to the American colonies. In the 1800s, it was very popular as a preventative medicine. They used to mix it with Canary wine, which was a fortified wine, and they would take this just like we take supplements today. You start to see the bitters that we're familiar with today in 1824 in Venezuela. Angostura is actually the name of the town where it was created. There, Dr. Johann Siegert gave this to his troops as a stimulant to keep them on their feet. He also used it for sailors to help prevent seasickness. You don't see bitters used in a cocktail as opposed to a medicine until the 1800s when you see the first definition of a cocktail, which is any type of a spirit, sugars, water, and bitters. It was often used in Prohibition times because a lot of the spirits that they were getting in America were not the most tasty. So you would use something like this as a flavoring agent to make it taste a little bit more palatable. One of the other kind of cool things that I learned while I was doing my research was there's a soda called Moxie. This was given originally as a medicine, and it was advertised as having bitters in it, but being one of the only medicines without alcohol and cocaine. Just a fun fact for you. For the bitters I'm making today, I wanted to try something a little bit different. I haven't used nuts in bitters before. I have made orange bitters, but I'm incorporating some new stuff today. And you can really make any version of it that you like. You just need to make sure that you have some type of a bittering agent, some types of spices to go in it, and then something to flavor it. This project is gonna take you about 3 weeks to complete, from start to finish. For supplies, you're going to need 2 mason jars, some type of an eyedropper. For the alcohol that you infuse your bitters in, the higher the proof, the better in this case, because the higher the proof, the better extraction of everything that you're putting in the jar you're going to get. For my specific recipe today, I'm using 1 cup of Everclear. For my flavoring agents, I have 2 tablespoons of cocoa nibs. I have a 1/2 cup of toasted and chopped pecans, a 1/4 cup of cracked whole coffee beans. For my spices, I have 1 star anise. You can use 10 to 12 whole black pepper here. And then I've got 6 to 7 whole allspice. And then for my bittering agent, I have a teaspoonful of the Gentian Root. Making bitters is pretty simple. Once you've got all of your ingredients measured out, you just throw it into the jar, cover it with the alcohol, and let it sit in a cool, dark place for 2 weeks. There's a couple things that I want to do before I put my ingredients in the mason jar. I've toasted my own pecans. You just put them in a pan on 350 and toast them for about 10 minutes. So I've got a rough chop on these. That's just gonna help flavor to get into the infusion a little bit better. The other thing that I want to do is crack these coffee pods. And the way that I'm gonna do this is I'm gonna take the same knife that I was using to chop the nuts, put it on its side. Then I'm gonna do the same thing with my allspice. If you're not comfortable using the knife in this way, you could also use the bottom of a heavy pot. But I like to live on the edge. You want to add the dry ingredients before you add your liquid. It just makes it a little bit easier to get everything into the jar. I've got my chopped pecans. my cracked coffee, my black pepper, star anise, the bittering agent, which is the Gentian Root, cocoa nibs, and the cracked allspice. After I've got all that in there, I'm going to pour a cup of Everclear over that, put the lid over it, and store it in a cool, dark place for 2 weeks. Check on your bitters infusion every couple days and give it a shake. This is going to help the extraction of everything that you put into the jar. After 2 weeks, strain it with a cheesecloth and set that aside. Take your solids only from your cheesecloth and add those to a pot with a cup of water and let it simmer for 10 minutes. After you've done this, let it cool completely and then add your spirit back into the mixture so you've got everything combined back into one pot. Transfer this back into that same mason jar and let it sit. After you've let this all sit together for a week, go ahead and strain it one more time with the cheesecloth and let it sit for a couple extra days. The couple extra days is just to let any solids kind of skim to the surface. You can then choose to spoon those off, or if you want to strain it one more time with the cheesecloth. And then I like to keep mine in an eyedropper. That's what I've got my orange bitters in now. Tune in a couple weeks to see how this turned out when I incorporate it into a Manhattan. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please leave any comments or questions that you have below. I am Jenna, and this is Gin and Tonic.